This is my first video update from Athens, Greece on this Thursday, November the 23rd. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with the very big news story coming out of the Netherlands, where we had elections and the party of Geert Wilders, the PVV, they won 37 seats, I believe, out of 150 total seats, and they came out in first place. And this is huge news. This is really big news. I imagine at this time right now, the leaders in the EU, Ursula von der Crazy and Jungle Joseph and Michelle, I imagine that they are pooping in their pants at these election results coming out of the Netherlands. And we may see a Prime Minister Wilders. Wow, that is pretty incredible. Let me read you what CNN has to say about this, because much of the collective West Main Street media is also pooping in their pants. And here is the title from CNN. Dutch far-right populist seeks to form government after shock election win. Dutch anti-EU far-right populist Geert Wilders will start looking for coalition partners on Thursday after a massive election win that is set to have wide repercussions in the Netherlands and Europe. A fan of fellow Eurosceptic Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, the vocally anti-EU Wilders has vowed to halt all immigration, slash Dutch payments to the Union, and block the entrance of any new members, including Ukraine. With 98% of the votes counted, his Freedom Party, PVV, won 37 seats out of 150, well ahead of 25 for a joint Labour Green ticket and 24 for the Conservative People's Party for Freedom and Democracy, the VVD, of outgoing Prime Minister Mark Rutte. So there are rumors that Mark Rutte, the outgoing Prime Minister and one of Klaus Schwab's favorite sons, they say that Mark Rutte could be heading for the top position in NATO. They actually say he's the front runner for the NATO Secretary General position to replace Stoltenberg. Kaja Kallas must be very disappointed. But I hated Russia more, said Kaja Kallas. I was a bigger Russia hater than Rutte. And Rutte's like, hold my beer. I'm giving F-16s to the Zelensky regime, Kaja. So I deserve the top position in NATO. Anyway, those are rumors for now. But the party that the EU was pulling for was the coalition of Labour and Greens, which was being led, I believe, by Mr. Timmermans. And he was like an EU vice president. An EU insider, and I imagine that Ursula and Jungle Joseph, they were hoping for Timmermans to come out on top, but I imagine they would have been okay with the party of Mark Rutte as well, the VVD, but instead they got the PVV, and they got Geert Wilders. And speaking about Viktor Orban, because they say that Wilders is a fan and a friend of Orban in Hungary, he tweeted, "The winds of change are here. Congratulations to Geert Wilders, PVV, on winning the Dutch elections." And he included an animated GIF of the Scorpions singing "Winds of Change." Wow. You know, I have to hand it to Viktor Orban. I really have to hand it to him. He uh, he stayed strong in his position. He stayed committed in his position with regards to Hungary and towards the European Union, and also with regards to the conflict in Ukraine, the special military operation. He didn't waver from his position, his policy, his beliefs. And for a year and a half, he has been demonized and he's been vilified, and he's been alone in the European Union. But a month ago, he got Fico in Slovakia, and now it looks like he's going to have Wilders in the Netherlands as well on his side. So Orban is forming a very formidable, very powerful coalition to go up against Ursula and the globalists. Incredible outcome in the Netherlands, an absolutely incredible outcome. So let's read some tweets and see what people are saying about this shocking victory from Geert Wilders and the PVV. From Eva Blardingerbroek, the Dutch people have spoken. The PVV has been ridiculed and excluded from government formations for years, yet now they're the largest party. The intimidation game has lost its power. This is the biggest middle finger imaginable for Rutte's destructive globalist policies. From Visegrad 24, which is very pro Ukraine, very pro NATO, they tweeted between October 7th and November 22, the electoral support for Geert Wilders rose from 12% to 23%. Did the large pro-Palestine demonstrations across the Netherlands cities have a role in pushing Dutch voters towards the staunchly anti-immigrant PVV? Question mark. So is that true? Everybody watching from the Netherlands, was he at 12%? Was the PVV at 12% and it rose to 23% in a little over 1 month? If that's true, that's pretty amazing. So that's a tweet from Visegrad 24, and I love this tweet from Zero Hedge. They posted, if only Argentina and the Netherlands had perfected mail-in ballots, none of this would have happened. In reference to Javier Milei, and now you have Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. If only they had perfected mail-in ballots. Well said, Zero Hedge. And you wanna go through some headlines from the Collective West Media? I did a search on Brave. Using the Brave browser, I did a search for election results in the Netherlands, and these are the top headlines. From CNN, Netherlands election results, far-right populist Wilders books major victory in exit poll. Al Jazeera, party of Dutch anti-Islam populist Wilders to win most seats, exit poll. BBC, Dutch election, anti-Islam populist Geert Wilders set for big win. Yahoo News, Wilders and the PVV, what do they stand for? Reuters, Dutch election, Wilders, far-right party, set for gains. And Reuters, praise fear after Dutch populist Wilders, his election win. So that's just some of the headlines from the Collective West Media. Incredible news coming out of the Netherlands. A rejection of the neoliberal globalists. Absolutely a rejection of the neoliberal globalists. This is coming from the Netherlands, one of the powers of the European Union. So this is very, very big news. Wow, what a day yesterday. What a day. And we'll see what happens. We'll see if Wilders can form a coalition with I think he's trying to form a coalition with the VVD. So far, his statements have been pretty realistic. He said something along the lines of he's going to form a coalition, but he's going to do everything by the book and according to the letter of the law to form a coalition and to govern the Netherlands. So his initial statements have been pretty grounded in reality. He he hasn't said anything so far that I've read that has been extreme, but obviously the collective West media they're very worried about Geert Wilders. But we'll see. We'll see what he will do. And we have the case of Slovakia and Fico, who has who has formed the government actually now, and he's the real deal. It seems like he is the real deal because he's come out right away and said, "No more weapons to Ukraine. No more money to Ukraine. We need to get to an end to this conflict. We need to get to a ceasefire. We need to look after our own country, our own interests, the interests of Slovakia, the interests of Europe." And he's remained firm in his stance and in his campaign promises. And then we have the other side, which is the Meloni case, where Giorgia Meloni, she won in Italy, and everyone was expecting Giorgia Meloni to be a type of ally to, say, Viktor Orban, and she was going to push back on the EU, push back on neoliberal policies, push back on war, and she turned out to be none of that. Meloni was a big bust. They flew her to Brussels, and they sat Meloni down, and in 24 hours, Meloni became an uber neoliberal globalist. So, we'll see where Wilders falls. My take on Geert Wilders, given everything he's gone through over the years, I hear he actually has to live in hidden safe houses, and he has 24-hour protection, like bodyguard protection. I imagine that he's gonna be more along the lines of Robert Fico, but we'll see. We'll see. He is, from what I understand, he is against the conflict in Ukraine. I think he is against EU expansion. He has been called Islamist. I think he said no more mosques and stuff like that in the Netherlands, anti-immigration. But we'll see. We will see exactly how he governs. So big news out of the Netherlands. And so we can now shift gears and talk about what is happening with the ceasefire in Gaza and the conflict in the Middle East. And the New York Times, they put out an article yesterday with the title, "Political Pressures on Biden Helped Drive Secret Cell of Aides in Hostage Talks." The deal came as Democrats are increasingly divided over Mr. Biden's embrace of Israel, particularly as the civilian toll in Gaza rose. So according to this article, Biden, he had secret diplomacy taking place over the last couple of weeks, shuttling back and forth between D.C., the Middle East, Qatar, Egypt, Tel Aviv, to get to a ceasefire, a multi-day ceasefire. And according to this article, Biden's secret cell diplomacy eventually worked out with much negotiations with Egypt and especially Qatar, who was the go-between for Hamas. It was Qatar who was speaking to Hamas, and Hamas to Qatar, Qatar to the Biden White House and to Israel, and they eventually got a ceasefire. From what this article says, it was CIA Director Burns' his final trip. I believe it was to Qatar or to Egypt. I'm not sure which country he was in last, but it was that final trip that he made to the Middle East, which sealed the deal for a multi-day ceasefire. By the way, the ceasefire is not going to be enacted today. It's going to take effect tomorrow, Friday. There's a delay in the ceasefire. From what I understand, it has to do with the hostages and more of a technical type of issue with regards to releasing the hostages and how to go about the release of the hostages. But the ceasefire will take effect tomorrow, Friday. So we do have a 1-day delay. Anyway, the New York Times article, actually, I'll read you a bit of it. it echoes pretty much everything that we discussed in my video update yesterday, and everything we've discussed on the Duran with Alexander, and everything Alexander has discussed on his channel. So it confirms, I guess it confirms our reporting, our analysis, or maybe the New York Times is watching our videos. Maybe the NYT is watching what we're saying. But, the NYT, they have their anonymous sources inside the Biden White House. So it pretty much follows along the same track that we have been reporting on this channel and on the Duran. Let me read you some of what the New York Times says in this article. The deal came at a time when Democrats are increasingly divided over Mr. Biden's embrace of Israel, particularly as the civilian toll in Gaza grows, and as polling shows the president receiving low marks on his handling of the crisis ahead of his re-election campaign. But the arrangement was also the latest example of the widening breach between the White House and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over Israel's overwhelming response to the Hamas attacks, which has led to the deaths of about 12,000 people in Gaza. For weeks, Mr. Biden has publicly and privately tried to convince the Prime Minister to pause the bombardment of Gaza, to allow in humanitarian aid, and to reduce civilian casualties. Mr. Netanyahu has consistently refused to consider a wide-scale halt to Israel's military operations in Gaza unless it would lead to the release of hostages. But some senior American officials have signaled they would not be disappointed if the pause became a more permanent ceasefire, if the White House tries to use the hostage deal to press for a longer-term ceasefire and start moving toward the bigger questions about occupation and a two-state solution that would put Mr. Biden on another collision course with Mr. Netanyahu when the fighting is scheduled to resume. So, the Biden White House is at odds with the Netanyahu administration. The Biden White House absolutely wanted and wants and got this multi-day ceasefire. They hope that this ceasefire can be extended to a longer pause in fighting. And the Biden White House, they absolutely needed this ceasefire because things did not go as planned with this war in the Middle East and this the bombing of Gaza. And so Biden has been taking big hits inside the United States with his approval rating. Even inside the Democrat Party, there's division. Internationally, Biden has been isolated and has been criticized for his handling of the war in Israel. And so the Biden White House, because their diplomacy was so awful and so catastrophic in the opening days of the conflict, they had to call an audible and change their position and push for a ceasefire. And as we have been reporting on this channel and on the Duran, it has been the Netanyahu administration that has pushed back on Biden's multi-day ceasefire goals, but they finally got the multi-day ceasefire. And now, as the New York Times is reporting, their problem lies with Netanyahu. I mean, the New York Times is openly saying that the Biden White House has a problem with Netanyahu, and they want to get an extended pause in the fighting, but it is Netanyahu who poses the problem for the Biden White House, as we have been reporting on this channel. And the New York Times says that the Biden White House will use these 4 or 5 days in the ceasefire to try and get Netanyahu to see things the way they see things. And I am positive that if Netanyahu doesn't play ball with the Biden White House, then the Biden White House will try to maneuver Netanyahu out of office. That's going to be what happens. While at the same time, you have China, Russia, BRICS, the United Nations. They're working towards a ceasefire and towards getting some sort of conference where they can discuss the war, winding down the war, and getting to a two-state solution. So as the United States is trying to get to a longer ceasefire and trying to get Netanyahu to agree to a longer ceasefire and opening the way up for some discussion with regards to a two-state solution. You have BRICS and the United Nations, Russia, China. They're also working towards an end to the hostilities and a two-state solution, which would be sponsored, which would be led by China, Russia, BRICS, and the United Nations, which would essentially mean that that the war, the conflict in Israel, in Gaza, in the Middle East would fall under the mediation of China, BRICS, and essentially the United Nations, which would be a huge defeat for the United States with regards to its influence and power in the Middle East. So it'll be an interesting couple of weeks going forward with regards to the war in Israel. And speaking about BRICS and Russia, Putin was speaking at a virtual G20 summit, and the Russian president, speaking to G20 leaders, he said that the Nord Stream attack was state terrorism. That is a direct quote from the Russian president. The sabotage operation was a blatant attempt to take Russia out as an energy supplier, the president said. And we are getting news that Russia, once whatever investigations are being conducted, I believe there are some investigations being taking place in Europe, and I also think at the UN level. But once various investigations conclude, Russia has signaled that they are going to take legal action against the people, the states, the actors that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So that would mean that Russia is going to go after Gilligan, the skipper, the professor, Marianne, Ginger, the millionaire, and his wife. They are going to go after the crew of the Andromeda, or maybe they're going to go after General Zaluzhny. I imagine that would make Zelensky very happy if Russia goes after General Zaluzhny, who was the mastermind behind the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. That's what the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post tell us. Or maybe, just maybe, when Putin was saying that this was state terrorism, he didn't name names, by the way. Putin did not say who, as he was speaking to the G20. But maybe, just maybe, Putin is referencing, I don't know, Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son, or maybe he's referencing Germany, or the UK, or I don't know who he could be talking about. I wonder if Olaf Scholz knew what was going on. I wonder when he was at that meeting in the White House a couple of weeks before the special military operation started. I wonder if Biden and Newland, Sullivan and Blinken, they sat down with Olaf and they said, Olaf, we're going to provoke a conflict with Russia. We're going to get regime change in Moscow. We're going to place 50,000 sanctions against the Russian Federation. We're going to sink the Russian economy. I wonder if they told Olaf all these things, and they said, "Look, Olaf, it's going to be a little hard for Germany because of these sanctions. Things are going to be a little tight for the German economy, but we'll get through it. And just in case we don't get through it, don't you dare think of backsliding and re-engaging with the Putin government, because you're getting pressure from the German business community. Because if you do backslide, we're going to blow up that pipeline of yours." I wonder if Olaf knew what was going on. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm sure that this is just all conspiracy theory stuff on my end. And I'm absolutely positive that it was either Zaluzhny, or it was, if you believe that Zaluzhny's still around, or it had to be Gilligan and the skipper. Maybe it was a combination. Maybe Zaluzhny was working with Gilligan and the skipper. You know, I remember watching some Gilligan's Islands reruns And I recall seeing Zelensky in one of those reruns, kind of floating around that island, walking around that island. I don't know, maybe I'm just imagining things, but I'm sure there's a smoking gun with Zelensky and his connection to the skipper and Gilligan. Maybe Zelensky was dating Marianne or Ginger. I don't know. Anyway, back on a serious note here. Enough joking around. Let's talk media. Let's talk media. Let's talk Lachlan Murdoch and the Murdoch empire. Because on November 20th, Reuters was reporting that Fox CEO Lachlan Murdoch meets Zelensky in Kiev in very important signal to Ukraine. Now, this was an underreported story. Lachlan Murdoch traveling to Zelensky, to Fortress Kiev, to meet with the Lionheart of Kiev, Zelensky, the Churchill of Kiev, the Lionheart of Kiev. I need ammo, not a ride. Yippee-ki-yay, MFers. When I hear that line, I think of Die Hard. It's like something John McClane would say. I need ammo, not a ride. It's perfect for Bruce Willis. Absolutely a perfect line for Bruce Willis. Anyway, so Murdoch, he was in Kiev. And not many people reported about Murdoch's trip to Kiev just a couple of days ago. But it's interesting. The reason I bring this up is because you then had the Sun interview with Zelensky, and the Sun is part of the Murdoch empire. And just yesterday, Zelensky was giving an interview to Fox News, and he talked about the super duper spring-summer counteroffensive that offends me and offends you and offends everybody. And he basically said that it didn't go quite as planned, and the stalled counteroffensive, according to Zelensky, was sending a bad message. This is what he told Fox News. But of course, Zelensky, in true Zelensky fashion, he was very, very adamant in his belief that if Ukraine receives all of the wonder weapons and more money and the military of 500,000 soldiers, then Zelensky can defeat Russia. But it's interesting that Murdoch goes to Kiev. You have Murdoch Media Properties interviewing Zelensky, and Zelensky doing this PR and media tour, which leads me to the belief that this is a media deal between Murdoch and Zelensky. I would not be surprised if this is a type of, I don't know, like paid advertisement, I guess, product placement. Murdoch flies into Kiev and he's like, well, this is what I need in order to put your face, Zelensky, in front of my properties. Here are my advertising, my product placement fees. And Zelensky's like, okay, this is a bit expensive. I won't be able to buy a home in Italy because of these advertising fees, but if it means I can be on television, okay. Bring the Sun reporter to me. Bring him to me. Let's do the interview, Mr. Murdoch. So yeah, that's what's going on here. This is all PR, media, information, war type of stuff. And Zelensky's looking for publicity. He needs to get in front of the American people. Obviously, Project Ukraine is collapsing. Obviously, the media attention around Project Ukraine is just not there anymore. Everyone is focused on the war in Israel, and now they're going to be focused on elections in the United States. And so Zelensky, he probably needs to purchase some advertisement, some TV time. So I think that's what's going on here. I think that's why Lachlan Murdoch was in Kiev. Just a hunch. Let's see. So the conflict in Ukraine is not going well. We are getting more and more reports that the Ukraine military is suffering catastrophic losses in Kherson as they use rubber life rafts to cross over the river in Kherson and try to build this bridgehead. And no one really understands what the purpose of this bridgehead is. No one understands what are you going to do with this, because what is 100 or 200 or 300 or 500 Ukraine military on the other side of the river in Kherson? What is this really going to do? I mean, what kind of offensive are you possibly going to mount? And what's happening is that the Russians are just annihilating the Ukraine military that insists on crossing over to the other side, as the Red Hot Chili Peppers sang. And then you have Avdiivka, and the Ukraine military is suffering catastrophic losses in Avdiivka as well, which is kind of like a Bakhmut 2 or a mini Bakhmut. And the Ukraine military, they're looking for soldiers. They are looking for soldiers. And in my video yesterday, I talked about how it appears Germany and the United States, or Germany and some parts of the Biden White House, say the neocon Austin wing of the Biden White House, Lloyd Austin, the Pentagon chief, how they're pushing Ukraine to just do a huge mobilization, a huge draft. 17-year-olds to 70-year-olds, men and women, just send them to the front lines and just try to keep this war going. But there are also reports that the Zelensky regime, they are contacting countries in Europe where Ukrainians fled during the opening months of the war. Military-aged men from Ukraine have gone to, and they're trying to get some of those men back to Ukraine, to send them to the front lines. And we are getting reports that the Zelensky regime, they're talking to Moldova, and they're trying to figure out a way to get some of the military-aged men who fled to Moldova, trying to get them back to Ukraine. And so far, according to the reports that I'm getting, Moldova is refusing to hand over the Ukrainian military-aged men in Moldova and send them back to Ukraine. Ukraine's neighbor refuses to hand over draft dodgers. There is currently no mechanism for returning the people to their home country, Moldova's foreign minister says. So every door that the Zelensky regime is knocking on with regards to trying to get the Ukrainian military-aged men from Europe back to Ukraine, every door they're knocking on is being slammed shut. I think it got the same response from the Czech Republic and for Germany, which is that there's no mechanism in place to send these men back to Ukraine. And these men know that if they were to get sent back to Ukraine, then they would get sent to the front line, and it would mean annihilation. So they're obviously not gonna. They're going to do everything in their power to not get sent back to Ukraine. Anyway, let's start wrapping this video up. How am I doing on time here? All right. I think I could take a little bit of a stroll, and we can wrap this video up here. And there was an article in The Guardian with the title, Yale historian says West can break Ukraine stalemate with more military aid. Timothy Snyder argues that dropping 5 more queens on the board would allow Ukraine to prevail. So the Guardian, they bring out the Yale historian to talk about how all that is needed for the Zelensky regime to win is to just pour in more money and more military aid. In this article, Mr. Snyder, the very smart Yale professor, he says that the West shouldn't be all doom and gloom. He says there shouldn't be all this doom and gloom in the West. Things are really not that bad. All that is needed to defeat Russia is just more commitment from the collective West. More money, more weapons, more commitment, and Russia will be defeated. And Mr. Snyder, he doesn't like the chess analogies. He really does not like how the war and how more aid to Ukraine is phrased in terms of a chess match. And here's what Snyder said. Snyder, a Yale professor, argued that continuing high levels of military aid could allow Ukraine to prevail in response to a recent interview given by Kiev's top military commander, General Zaluzhny, suggesting that the war was deadlocked. Quote, "I hate the stalemate analogy because war is not a game of chess," Snyder said in an interview with The Guardian. "In chess, there are only so many pieces on the board, and the reason why you get into a stalemate is that your pieces get into a certain arrangement. However, war did not mirror the board game," the historian argued, "because the amount of resources or weaponry available to each side is not limited. The reason why I hate the stalemate analogy is that it suggests we can't just drop 5 more queens in the Ukrainians' board, and we can do it at any time." That's right. Why only 5 queens? Why not drop 50 queens? 50 queens, a couple of rooks, and and a couple thousand pawns. Why not? Why not? I mean, why stop at 5? Because everything is unlimited in neocon world. In neocon world, you can just print endless amounts of money, produce endless amounts of weapons, overthrow endless amounts of governments, and everything is just unlimited in neocon la la land. Oh boy. So yeah, he's just like, drop another 5 more queens and the war is done. So it's really not a stalemate. And the collective West can drop those 5 queens at any time. Well, then do it, Mr. Snyder. That's my response to a very smart Yale professor. He's probably a lot smarter than I am. But as a simple man, the simple man that I am, I would tell Mr. Snyder, you know, if the West can win with just 5 more queens, then just drop those 5 more queens, bro. Just do it. I mean, if it's that simple, just start producing the artillery shells that you need. 2 million, 3 million, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million. I mean, nothing's limited, right? Just start producing 100 million 155 shells tomorrow. Snap your fingers and produce it, print it, do it. This is neocon la world. Anyway, I just thought I would read that story to everybody because it just shows the panic, the desperation of the collective West, of the neocons, and it shows that they really have no idea, they have no plan as to how to get out of this mess that they have created. These are not ideas. This is coming from a Yale professor. This is not an idea. This is not a policy. This is not even a way to win the war. This is not a way to get out of this mess. This is not a way to save Ukraine. This is not a plan. This is fantasy stuff that these guys are talking about, and it's coming from a Yale professor. Anyway, I talked about Czech Republic and how Ukraine, they approached the Czech Republic, and they were asking for those Ukraine refugees in the Czech Republic to be returned back, and I believe the Czech Republic told them no mechanism for that. Well, we had a meeting of the Visegrad Four that took place, of which Czech Republic is part of, and President Pavel, in this meeting of the Visegrad Four, he named Russia as the main threat to Europe and denounced the preparation of European armies for a high-intensity conflict, clearly not realizing that a high-intensity conflict with Russia would result in World War III and the complete annihilation of Europe. That is the tweet from the Sirius Report. Yeah. You know, if Germany, because Germany continues to ramp up escalation with Russia, if Germany and the Czech Republic and the UK, if they want to go down this road, you know, unfortunately, you've been down this road before, and if this is the road you want to go down, God help you. That's all I have to say. God help you, Mr. Pavel. I think you know where this road leads to and what the inevitable end will be when you go up against Russia. Keep in mind that Russia has already defeated 3 NATO militaries. Russia has already defeated 3 NATO militaries. NATO will never tell you that. The collective West will never tell you that. They'll tell you this is a stalemate and all of this nonsense. But just keep in mind that Russia has defeated 3 NATO proxy armies. The strongest NATO military in all of Europe, that was Ukraine. By far the strongest NATO military, with 300 billion in financing and funding. And now you have Pavel talking about a European army to take on Russia. Whatever, dude. Whatever, bro. Just drop another 5 more queens on the chessboard. Drop 20 more queens on the chessboard, Mr. Pavel. Anyway, let's do a quick clown world. We'll wrap this video up. So there was this Obama, I forgot this guy's name, Stuart something. He was Obama's national, or he was on Obama's National Security Council Advisory Board or something like that. This guy was an Obama official, and yesterday he was on video and he was harassing a street vendor in New York. And the street vendor was a Muslim street vendor, and he was harassing him and saying some pretty disgusting stuff to this guy. And he was smiling while doing it. He was happy saying all of this stuff. And the street vendor, to give credit to the street vendor, he was, I mean, I saw some of the video. He was pretty restrained and cool about it. I mean, he handled it really, really well, even though he was being mocked and insulted by this idiot Obama official. And anyway, this guy was arrested. He's a real clown, this guy. And the guy that owns this food stand, this food cart, he said that if this guy apologizes, then no problem. I guess he'll drop charges, or they'll let him go or something like that. But there are photos of him as he was being arrested. And he was still smiling. He was still smirking, this guy. Anyway, not so much a funny clown world, but a clown world because this guy's a clown. That's why. And he was part of Obama's staff, his advisory staff. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. Use the code TheDuran20. Let's see what's going on here. Use the code TheDuran20, 20% off all merch. Pick up a Duran long sleeve. Take care.